with us was through National Human Rights Commission in India, who shied away from declaring it as a genocide. But they said that what happened in Kashmir with this community was akin to genocide. So this is the word smithing that is being played, the word jugglery that is being played to undermine what happened. So other than that, whatever there has been in the records, that is very much belittling, that is very much hurting what happened with the community. They call us migrants, but the technical word as United Nations is internally displaced people. But for 32 years, they have not changed the nomenclature. Number second is that they have put our deaths as 200 and something, but we have done a peer-to-peer validation of the records of around 1600 killings. And that is only through terrorism. Then many people died because of sunstroke, as you will see, snake bite, because of starvation, because of depression, because a lot of unnatural deaths, but they have not been in part of the record. So this is what has been going on to undermine and purposefully hurt the sentiments contrary to what should have been undertaken by the government. That is what I wanted to submit.
Even we couldn't find any document. We sent our RTIs also couldn't find any documentation anywhere. In fact, there was no government between 18th and 20th of January in 1990. Yes. There was no chief minister, no government.
Mr. Farooq Abdullah and his.
He resigned on the.
He resigned, right? And a lot of narratives say he was not even in Kashmir on that day. So.
Yeah.
It's and there is a question on that as well about what happened. There was apparently a newspaper report, it's alleged, in Pakistan or so place before on 10th January about something happening. And one side of the narrative is to blame Jagmohan completely for this, which a lot of Kashmiri pundits have said it's not the truth, right? So we have to navigate through that as well. But coming to you, Vivek, one question was that you did get a chance to meet a lot of Kashmiri pundits across the United States. Someone was asking, how was it different when you talk to Kashmiri pundits in India? A lot of them do reside in Jammu and stuff. And did you find a sort of a difference in narrative or what their attitude towards the issue was, I'm summarizing the question.
No, in fact, I personally met a lot of people in Jammu. I didn't find any difference, I didn't find any difference. In fact, I found lots of things common. Okay? Common number one, that nobody even tried to speak to us or listen to us in last 30 years. That was one common thing. Second most common thing was that all of them believed in educating their children. There were a lot of emphasis on education. And this is true. The other day we were in Capitol Hill for a congressional reception, and one of the congressmen said that Kashmiri Pandits are amongst the most successful communities, of the most successful communities, quote unquote, he said something like that. And today they are known as one of the most educated ethnic communities in the world. Okay, and and that is what I was saying when I was talking about India, this emphasis. And this education does not mean degrees, this education means value addition. It is character building. It's about being inclusive, it's about being tolerant, it's about being understanding the problems and finding a peaceful solution. And 30 years is not a long time. Before the real Jews activism began after the World War, it was 30, 40, 50 years later. In fact, all these movies were made around late 90s and 2000, which was 50 years later. So we are lucky that 30 years later, actually, we have created the first film on Kashmiri genocide. The world is going to see it, and I'm sure some conversation around it is going to be.
Absolutely. I think the question is, you have to give people to rebuild their lives. Then they are willing to tell you their story of persecution. And what Vivek said is very true, that Kashmiri Pandits are very successful. But you have to, guys, understand one thing. Everything they had in terms of property, houses, was just reduced to zero one day. And they all moved to different parts of the world and came back in 30 years, which is quite incredible, if you say. Pallavi, actually, someone alluded to a point you made about, a glimpse of what you said was seen in Kashmir in the 90s. They said that they were in Kashmir in July 1989 on trekking, and they only saw glimpses of what you alluded to. But in 1990, what happened, even though it happened a few months after, it was completely unknown to them. So, apart from this, we know that the coverage wasn't that good. As an actor, I wanted to ask you, how does one get the facts, and we can probably use this one as well. How does one get the facts, channelize it? Because cinema is part fiction, associated with the truth. Ultimately, you guys are not, making a documentary, right? Yet you want to cover all the aspects of what you do. So how do you channelize those emotions, and how do you portray them on screen?
Well, as an actor, it becomes a little difficult in films like these because, as you'll see on the 30th, the part that I'm playing was not a fun and easy part. That's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry.
When the script was first given to me as an actor, as a producer, I had read it already. But when Vivek told me that you have to play this part, there was, I really didn't know how to react because it completely goes against the narrative. And I had gone through, so much research, and I knew the exact story of the community. And I said, how the hell am I going to play this role? Because it's very difficult. But then I later thought about it, and I thought I was the most equipped, the best equipped to play that part because I had completely understood the pain. And had it gone to any other actor, they would have done a fabulous job undoubtedly, as good actors do. But I thought I had an extra edge because I knew the stories completely. So, talking purely from a professional point of view, I enjoyed playing that role because it's one of the strongest characters. But from a human point of view, I completely hated myself for doing that part.
On a lighter note, Vivek, Pallavi is going to have a separate conversation for the 9 ugly people in Tashkent Files remark. But, I'm just kidding here. Parag, before I come to you, I have one question for Vivek. And आप मानोगे नहीं, अभी ये तो release हुई नहीं. There are already talks about a sequel that people are asking. That are you going to make a sequel on how the media, political establishment, even United Nations, for all its love about human rights, has completely ignored this issue? Or are you motivated, or would you do it in a documentary form? So if you were given a choice, it's all hypothetical, of course.
So of course, no, the hypothesis is the beginning of finally arriving at the real thing. Of course, I can make hundreds of films like this, that's why I'm there. But the problem is everybody keeps asking me, Vivek, make a film on this, make a film on that, why don't you make a film on that? These films require a lot of research, and we do a lot of research. But the problem is everybody wants us to make these films, but nobody wants to even give 1 penny for research. And this is something very important you have to understand. Why Kashmir was called Knowledge Center? Because the society, the kings and the society, they were helping these rishis do research. They were all researchers. And which is why India created some of the most valuable, most precious knowledge for the humanity. And why we have not created anything great in terms of music, poetry, art, architecture, value addition in last so many years? Because nobody cares about research. We come to USA and we say we want to live in USA because they spend a lot of money on research. We understand the value of research, but we don't want to contribute even 1 penny for research. So if you really want to change the narrative, if you really want India to shine, and if you want your children and grandchildren to be proud of this great country, you cannot win this narrative war by forwarding WhatsApp messages. You will have to create products. You will have to create books which are evidence-based, research-based. You need documentaries, you need movies, you need music. That's why everybody knows about the Holocaust. Nobody even knows about our partition story. The world doesn't know how we were butchered. People don't know about the famine story of Winston Churchill. People don't know how India was invaded. There are so many movies on Roman Empire and Aztec Empire, all these empires, but nothing how India was invaded by Islamic invaders, tyrants. How India was colonized, no films. I spoke about Buddhism. There you go and you will find hundreds of documentaries and films on Christianity. But when you go to YouTube tonight, do this experiment, go and write Christianity and you will get about all the greatness of Christianity documentaries and films. Write Hinduism, they will say monkey god, superstition, milk coming out from somebody's trunk, all these kind of things you will find on YouTube.
Or that horrible Indiana Jones movie,
Yeah.
which misrepresented India.
The reason is we don't invest in research. Do that. We have an I Am Buddha Foundation. We put all our money into research over there. Everybody says make movies, but when we say, okay, contribute for research, nobody does that. Until you do that, we will never win this narrative.
Thank you, Vivek. And one thing is, like, it's going to sound a little hypocritical coming from me because I am an engineer, but Indians do put a lot of emphasis on doctors, engineers, lawyers, which is good. But we should also not completely rule out if our children are interested in history, movies, arts, because that is important too. And a lot of, if you go to universities, I mean, Vivek and Pallavi know, they've been to a lot of universities. You know, on the liberal arts side, our narrative is completely being squished. It's like,
Absolutely.
yeah, if you talk about Kashmir and just do a Google scholar search and stuff, the kind of absolute nonsense that you'll see written is just unbelievable. So, you know, kudos to you guys for doing this effort.
So if you are coming on the 30th to see this film, please bring your young children. If your
Absolutely.
children are going to university or are in university, you must bring it. You will thank us for that.
616 and above, please.
Yes. Thank you. But I have one question for you. You mentioned about the genocide. One of the questions we got was, what do we need to know to get UN and the world to recognize this as genocide, right? Is something as expats in United States, can they do something different than this? I mean, do they write to them? Is there certain narratives that need to get published in certain publications?
I think I have a very contrarian view towards that. I would say that the minute you declare yourself a victim to any authority, you say that I'm going to be subservient to them. And within India, I think is perfectly okay because you have the Indian government which is supposed to be on our side. So that's one thing. But the minute you globalize something and you say that I want to be certified victim, you are telling them that please help me. And do you really want the United Nations to get involved into Indian affairs? And I would say that has never, never, ever been our history to be subservient to anybody. In fact, that is the reason why we are still here today. So let's keep the United Nations out of it. But you may not agree with me, but that's a very, very strongly held belief that this is something which Hindus in the US, we should be very, very careful that we don't demand a seat at the table and demand servitude and subservience. When other people do it, they have a very hierarchical system. They have already declared themselves subservient to their masters. We do not want to be declared subservient to anybody other than ourselves.
Fascinating, fascinating.
No, I would like to add
Yeah.
on this, if I may. You know, international community created through United Nations Genocide Convention. In 1946, they created this definition of genocide. Now what happens? Now all respective countries, they don't have a mechanism to recognize genocide. And because any country where genocide takes place, they will shy away from it. Because they will say, oh, it will put the country it will give a bad name to the country. So we don't have country-specific laws, even though we have laws under United Nations. So that is the problem of the genocide, whether it happens with Yazidis, whether it happens with other communities, no country will come forward. So there is a flaw in that. But I think that every country, civilized country, has to take this as its own and recognize this problem and punish the culprits. So that is how this genocide, this menace will finish once for all. But if we do not act on that, it emboldens those elements who want to do all these evil things. And that is how every country, including India, needs to think about bringing strong laws against this genocide.
On a lighter note, I heard a phone ring and it's 2 hours and without a warning, not one phone rang. So give yourselves a round of applause. What an attentive crowd this has been. Please keep up the discipline of that. And that just tells you how interested and invested everyone is in the subject. But Vivek, this is a very interesting question I got. That in a world where everyone is trying to claim a victimhood narrative, right? Taking what Parag said forward, how can one have normalized conversations with communities who have persecuted others, right? When you talk about Kashmir, especially with Kashmiri Pandits, a lot of people will tell you that it was some neighbors or some people who they knew for like many years and stuff that, you know, gave the information and so forth, right? So when moves on, and as a filmmaker, when you are interviewing and almost thinking that you have to sort of even talk to both sides, how does one differentiate that?
Yeah, it's a very, very complex situation. But first thing is to understand, there are two ways you can live your life. Either you are part of this narrative, war of narratives. You are interested, you participate in this war. It's like a game. And it's not today's game, it's been going on for thousands of years. And if you see, there has not been even a single day in our humanity's history where there has not been a war on this earth. And if you see who has been participants of this war, who are the actors? We were not the actors. I'm talking about between different societies and countries. We have not done that. So first you have to understand about this war which is going on of narratives. Now how this game of narratives is being played. First thing what they do is, there are people who say my way or no other way. Well, communists also do the same thing. And in fact, communists are the most radical religion in the world. They are more radical than the radicalized religions, because radical religions are picking up guns and destroying you. They pick up your mind, your children's mind, and then they destroy you and your entire culture. So how they do it step by step? First thing they do is they create doubt. Just to give an example, in India, say in Diwali, they'll say whether it is correct to burn firecrackers or not. Or Holi, is it correct or appropriate to use water or not? That's how they create doubt. Doubt starts a debate. The minute you create a doubt, it starts a debate. And when you start a debate, the purpose of debate is somebody is going to win, somebody is going to lose. And the society gets divided. And that is the best time for denial. Like when I started researching this, in fact, when you see the film, you'll know how beautifully we have used it. When I started this research on Kashmiri genocide, the first thing people will say, no, not so many people were killed, only 219 were killed. You say, okay, 219, somebody will say, no, even there are some fake registrations in that. They start disputing everything and you go into denial mode. When we go to Kashmir, every Kashmiri living today in Kashmir says, no, we never did anything to Kashmiri Pandits, wo to khud hi bhag gaye wahan se. Right? No, it's illogical logic. But then media starts playing on that. Then with denial what happens is destruction of truth. And once truth is destroyed, the very next thing is you deceive the generations. And that's exactly you will find is what is happening in Kashmir today. This entire generation in last 30 years, they are not even aware that there is any diversity. They don't even know that anybody else except for Islam, any other faith other than Islam exists in the world. You can't believe it. And that's what I think is the problem. Once you understand the game, then you can fight them with your greatness, with your strength. That's what I'm saying. Play on the front foot, not on the back.
And the narrative of denial is like, we only pointed 3 guns at their heads. We didn't fire them. They just left before we fired. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
So what sort of a, there is not even a counter to this bizarre logic that we are given. Guys, we're flat out of time for this. Before our vote of thanks, any closing comments that Vivek you would like to do? And then we'll get Divyenduji for a vote of thanks.
No, whatever I have to say, I've said in the film. So closing comment is please come and watch it on the 30th of December. That's it.
Thank you everyone. My name is Divyendu Singh. I would like to convey the sincere vote of